Sure. Thank you, Michaela.
Welcome.
I'd like to thank HP Live for hosting our webinar today. Like Michaela said, my name's Melissa Rarig. I'm the Deputy Executive Director with the National Commission for Health Education Credentialing, or NCHES. So thank you all for joining us today for What's CHES, MCHES Got to Do with It. We're going to talk today about how to distinguish between a quality certification program and a certification program, or excuse me, certificate program. Michael, I'm having some difficulties advancing the slides.
Okay. Try clicking on the desktop. Sometimes if you click out of it, it doesn't know what you're talking about.
Okay, that was it. Sorry about that, everyone.
No worries.
So today our learning objectives are to distinguish the key differences between a quality certification program versus an assessment-based certificate program. To understand the significance of the Health Education Specialist Practice Analysis, to recognize the importance of NCCA accreditation for certification programs, and lastly, to identify the role of the certification body NCHES. So I'd like to take some time to introduce our presenters today, and I'm going to be reading a brief bio of our presenters. So first we have Beth Cheney. Beth Cheney is an assistant professor in the Department of Health Education and Promotion at East Carolina University. Prior to her move to ECU, Dr. Cheney was an assistant professor at the University of Florida. Dr. Cheney received her BS in biology and an MA in health studies from the University of Alabama, and her PhD in health education and promotion from Texas A&M University in August 2006. She is a master certified health education specialist. While earning her PhD at Texas A&M, Dr. Cheney served as a lecturer, graduate research assistant, internship supervisor, and graduate teaching assistant, as well as assistant to the editor and copy editor for the American Journal of Health Studies. Dr. Cheney was an active member of the American Association for Health Education. She served on the board of directors, was the student member of the board of directors, a member of the convention planning committee, and as a board of directors liaison to the student involvement committee. Dr. Cheney also served as a co-guest editor for International Electronic Journal of Health Education, a special issue on distance education models and outcomes. She served as a representative for AHI on the development of a joint position paper with the Society of Directors of State Health, Physical Education, and Recreation on quality assessment of distance education in grades K through 12. She also participated in the development of the joint position paper by the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, and the American Diabetes Association on the importance of school health education. Dr. Cheney received an AHI Presidential Citation in 2007 and was recently chosen as an AHI Fellow. Dr. Cheney is currently serving a 5-year term on the Board of Commissioners for NCHES and has been a member of the American Public Health Association, Society for Public Health Education, and Eta Sigma Gamma. Dr. Cheney's research focal areas include quality assessment of distant education applications, evaluation, and survey development. Dr. Cheney has numerous publications and has conducted numerous research presentations in these areas. Dr. Cheney's research efforts have received funding from the United States Department of Education grant competition to prevent high-risk drinking or violent behavior among college students. Dr. Cheney served as the evaluator on this grant award. In addition, Beth received the Outstanding Teacher of the Year 2007 to 2008 award for Texas A&M's University Division of Health Education and Outstanding Teacher of the Year 2011-2012 from the Department of Health and Education and Promotion at the University of Florida. Welcome, Beth. Next, we have Dixie Dennis. Dixie Dennis became the Associate Provost for Grants and Sponsored Programs and Dean of the College of Graduate Studies at Austin Peay State University in February 2010. Before then, she served as Director of the Title III Grant and Directors of Grants and Sponsored Research. Prior to those positions, she was Dean of College of Science and Mathematics, Dean of the College of Professional Programs and Social Sciences, and the Chair of the Department of Health and Human Performance, all at Austin Peay State University. Before going to Austin Peay, she served as research coordinator of 2 doctoral programs at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Dennis has given much time and service to the community, university, and her profession. For example, she was past chair of MCHES and held membership on the board of directors for the American Association for Health Education, or AHE. Currently, she is the co-chair of the Health Education Specialist Practice Analysis Task Force. She is a Master Certified Health Education Specialist. Dr. Dennis received fellow status in AHE. She recently finished service as editor of distinction. Editor of the Health Education Teaching Technique Journal. She was previously editor of the Journal of Health Education Teaching Techniques from the Foundation for the Advancement of Health Education. Dr. Dennis is a reviewer for 8 other peer-reviewed journals. She also enjoys service to the community, including chairing the Clarksville Mayor's Fitness Council, chairing the Clarksville Group, board member of the Acera Care Hospice, as well as service in Rotary and Urban Ministries, to name a few. Since 1999, Dr. Dennis has authored and co-authored 45 peer-reviewed or invited journal publications. Moreover, she has authored 2 book chapters and a textbook, Living, Dying, Grieving, and she has more book chapters that will be released in January 2014. Also, she has delivered numerous scholarly and professional presentations at national conferences and conventions. Welcome, Dixie.
Thank you.
And lastly, myself, I'm currently the Deputy Executive Director for MCHES. I oversee projects related to communicating messages about health education certification and MCHES to various audiences. I serve as staff liaison to MCHES Marketing Committee. I'm the publications editor of MCHES News Bulletin and the production editor for printed, electronic, and other marketing materials. I oversee the strategic planning and leadership for many special division board projects. I assess and plan all the national meeting presence, position statements, and formal inquiries for MCHES. I received a master's in public health from East Stroudsburg University. I am currently a Master Certified Health Education Specialist, and I have over 7 years of community and school health experience prior to working for MCHES. I presented numerous local and national health conferences such as the APHA and SOFI conferences. So we're just going to take some time to find out who we have on the call today or participating in the presentations. So if you could refer to the poll and answer the question, are you currently a CHES or MCHES?
Okay, there you go, Melissa. Are you currently a CHES or MCHES?
Okay.
You were awfully quick on the draw.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But people are being very quick at answering.
Okay, good.
So I'll give you 3 more seconds to answer. All right, I'm going to close.
And Michael, I know from our practice round that I think you'll have to reveal the results as I cannot see them on my screen.
Correct. Yep, you have 87% are currently CHES and 13% are not.
Oh, great.
All right. Back to you.
So we have one final question before we get into the presentations. So if you are certified, so if you are one of those 87% that indicated you're certified, how many years have you been MCHES certified?
There you go. How many years have you been MCHES certified? 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 14, 16 to 20, 20 plus. And again, they're pretty darn quick on the draw. Alrighty, I'm going to close this in 3 seconds. All right, closing the poll and sharing the results. All right, Melissa, 65% are 0 to 5, 12% 6 to 10, 12% 11 to 15, 5% and 5% and 6% respectively for 16 to 20 and 20 plus.
Okay, so great. So we have a variety of experience levels on the call today. So hopefully everyone will learn something new about the certifications. So I'm going to now turn it over to Beth Cheney, who's going to talk about the quality certification programs versus assessment-based certificate programs. So Beth?
Great. Thank you, Melissa. My part of this webinar is to actually discuss the differences between a quality certification program versus an assessment-based certificate program. The information that I'm going to present to everyone is based on a published document from the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, or ICE. The Institute for Credentialing Excellence was actually established in 1977, and it is dedicated to promoting excellence in credentialing worldwide. It's a leader in setting quality standards for credentialing organizations, and through its division, the National Commission for Certifying Agencies, or NCCA, has provided more than 30 years of accrediting services to credentialing industry. ICE is accredited by the American National Standards Institute as a developer of American National Standards. Next slide. So according to the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, the components listed on this slide are essential for a valid certification program. So number one, we must conduct a role delineation or a job analysis, which is periodically validated. So our field of health education does this every 5 years, and Dr. Dixie Dennis will discuss the most recent job or practice analysis, as we're calling it, later in this presentation. We then must link our national competency exam to a defined body of knowledge based on the results of that job or practice analysis. Again, in our field, we do this at MCHES through the development of the CHES and MCHES examinations. Then the reliability and validity of the exam, and it's actually the scores from the items of each exam. We determine the reliability and validity of those scores using specific psychometric methods. From there, then, we have to develop a minimum pass point and a score that is established. As you know, not everyone passes the competency exam. And lastly, parallel forms of the exam must be created, and at MCHES, we do have test banks of items for both the CHES and MCHES examinations. So this is according to ICE, the components of how we have to develop our examination for a valid certification program. Next slide. So this term certification, you might have heard it used a lot these days, and it doesn't always mean the same thing to everyone. Programs referred to as certifications by a variety of providers do not always represent the same level of achievement. So for example, you might see some providers label participants at a continuing education program as being part of a certification program and tell the people who complete that course that they are now certified in a specific area. Whereas you have individuals like the 87% that are on this call who are certified as CHES or MCHES, who have passed a national competency exam or boards to become certified, and they might not think that completing a continuing education program represents that same level of achievement. So this discussion on the differences between a certification program and a certificate program is actually happening in a number of fields, not just ours. With recognition that there are differences between the two, certification versus assessment-based certificate programs, and the fact that certificate programs do play a valuable role in professional competence, ICE established a certificate task force to, number one, identify characteristics of quality certification and assessment-based programs, to outline the distinguishing features of each, and to truly explore what ICE's future role might be with respect to assessment-based certificate programs. So the work of this task force has been incorporated into a document that's titled Defining Features of Quality Certification and Assessment-Based Certificate Programs, which highlights those similarities and differences between the two types of programs. I'm going to base my presentation today on the work of this task force, and please note that the comparisons that have been given are based on 12 key aspects of certification and assessment-based certificate programs, which include looking at the primary focus of each type of program, the content of the program and how it's identified, who oversees the program, so program oversight is important, the provider's role in education and training, education training requirements as well as prerequisites, and lastly, the assessment for both types of programs. Next slide. So the primary focus of a professional certification program, and a certification program is similar to what we have, or is what we have at MCHES. The focus of this is provided an independent assessment of knowledge, skills, and or competencies that are required for a competent performance of an occupational or professional role or specific work-related tasks and responsibilities. So the certification is intended to measure or enhance continued competence through recertification or renewal requirements. The certification is awarded to participants that have demonstrated requisite work-related knowledge, skills, and competencies. They've met other requirements established by that certification program. So whether it's academic degrees, specified numbers of years practicing in the profession, and if you think about both the certification in our field, the CHES and the MCHES, we do look at coursework in health education for one to be eligible to sit for the CHES exam and the MCHES exam. And once those national competency exams are taken and passed, one must maintain the credential through continuing education. So for the CHES, obviously, to become eligible, we do look at coursework. For the advanced level credential, the MCHES, it requires the coursework as well as years of experience practicing in the profession for one to be eligible to sit to take that national competency exam. And to maintain it, one must complete a specified number of continuing education contact hours. Next slide. So that was the certification program. Now, the definition of an assessment-based certificate program, the primary focus of this type of program is facilitating the accomplishment of intended learning outcomes. So although assessment is an integral part of this type of program, the primary purpose of the program is to provide education and training, which supports the accomplishment of intended learning outcomes. So the certificate awarded designates that the participants have completed that training and has demonstrated that they understand the intended learning outcomes. Next slide. So the content of a professional certification program, again, is based on the knowledge, skills, and competencies required to practice at both the entry and advanced level or to perform some specific work-related task and responsibilities. Now, those knowledge and skills and competencies that are the focus of that certification program are identified through a formal study, the job analysis or practice analysis. So we do this in our field of health education. We have a job analysis that has been conducted. Actually, we started with the role delineation. Then we had the competency update project that rolled out in 2006. We had the health educator job analysis. And then Dr. Dennis will talk to you about the newest job or practice analysis study that's being conducted in our profession, our field, in just a moment. So the assessment of the certification program is based on the results of that framework that comes from doing or conducting that job or practice analysis. So the knowledge and skills and competencies targeted by that certification program are periodically updated as needed based on those findings of the formal study to ensure that our certification programs continues to reflect current professional practice. So you'll note when Dr. Dennis talks, we do these practice analyses every 5 years to update the framework of practice. That then becomes the framework for both the CHES and MCHES examinations. The content of an assessment-based certificate program, different than our certification program, may include knowledge and skills or competencies that are related to the occupation and professional role or specific work-related tasks and responsibilities, or it can relate to general interest or leisure pursuits, such as first aid, safety, injury prevention. The intended learning outcomes are associated knowledge, skills, and competencies. Those are the focus of the education and training that are identified through a systematic analysis of needs. And these can be the needs of participants that are participating in that educational course, the industry itself, consumers, or other identified stakeholders. And so the content of that program is periodically reviewed and updated as needed. And typically this is done by subject matter experts and qualified individuals to ensure that obviously the content presented is accurate and consistent with what's generally accepted within that discipline or that field. Next slide. So in terms of oversight, there's a big difference between a certification program and an assessment-based certificate program. When you're talking about oversight for a professional certification program like what we have at MCHES, a governing body with representation from relevant stakeholders is charged with oversight of that program. So that body is legally or administratively autonomous from other entities and maintains control over all essential decisions related to the certification activities. So as Melissa was describing our bios, you heard that both Dr. Dennis and I serve on the Board of Commissioners for MCHES. The Board of Commissioners is an elected governing body over MCHES, or that certifying agency. Whereas for a certificate program, a governing body with oversight responsibilities of that program is not required. However, the program should function with input, obviously, from subject matter experts and qualified individuals who assist in the development and the delivery and the evaluation of that program. The certification program, like what we have at MCHES, the provider conducts the certification program independently of any educational training program. So what that means is that the assessment, the CHES, the MCHES exams are not linked to a specific class or a course or other educational training programs to a specific provider of classes, courses, or programs. The assessment is not designated or designed to evaluate mastery of intended learning outcomes for a specific class or a course or a training program, nor is the certification program provider the sole provider of any education or training that may be required for the certification. So the certification program provider, which is MCHES, is not responsible for accrediting any educational or training programs or courses that help to lend to that certification. So for those 87% on the call today that are certified, you note that MCHES does not provide the educational training for the certification. They're a separate entity to do that, although we do have designated providers that can do some of the continuing education training once you are certified. Whereas with a certificate program, the provider conducts or sponsors the education training, and that is required for the certificate. So the assessment is aligned with that educational training and is designed to evaluate accomplishments of going through that training. And you have to obviously be able to be confident in those intended learning outcomes that the provider wanted you to know in developing that class or that course or that program. Next slide. Really quickly, before we go into the polling question, I want to just talk briefly about differences between assessment and the validity of the assessment, as well as maintaining the credential. So with a professional certification program, as you know, with assessment, the purpose of the assessment for those that have been certified, you know that we look to evaluate the mastery of those sub-competencies of the framework of practicing in health education. That assessment takes place after the participant has had the opportunity to acquire the targeted knowledge, skills, and competencies. And that assessment is conducted in a standardized manner in a secure, proctored environment. And you know that successful completion of that assessment is required to receive the certification. Whereas with an assessment-based certificate program, you'll see both formative and summative assessments that occur. Usually the summative assessment happens at the end of that course or that program to evaluate if the participant actually does understand those intended learning outcomes. And that can happen in a variety of ways after that course is completed. And so when you have successful completion of that summative assessment, typically then you receive that certificate to say that you completed successfully that course, and now you have a certificate in that area. That's that's different than the certification program. When you're talking about the validation of the assessment content for a certification program like what we have at MCHES, the process of validating the content of that assessment, what you see on the CHES and MCHES exam, includes that formal study, so the practice analysis that we'll hear about in a moment, and that's conducted in accordance with generally accepted practice, and the documentation of the link between that study and the findings to the competencies and sub-competencies that are represented on the CHES and MCHES exam or on that assessment. So the assessment content is periodically revised, and it's based on the findings of that job or practice analysis. When you're talking about a certificate program different than a certification program, you know that the process of validating the content of how you're assessed to say that you've passed that the certificate to be able to get a certificate, that typically includes just documentation between the link of you attended and also you understand the intended learning outcomes in the assessment. So that assessment content is periodically revised as needed by subject matter experts and qualified individuals to ensure that it continues to reflect that scope and purpose of the program and remains aligned with the education and training for those intended learning outcomes. In terms of maintaining the credential, for the certification, there is a time limit. So basically, it will lapse or expire at the end of a predetermined time period if you don't recertify or renew. To maintain the credential in the professional certification program, a certificate is required to engage in specific activities designed to measure or enhance continued competence. So with the certification such as the CHES and MCHES, obviously we have to continue with continuing education contact hours to renew and to recertify every certain time period when that lapses. Also, certificates with a professional certification program are subject to a disciplinary policy, and we do have one at MCHES. Whereas an assessment-based certificate program is generally not time limited, so it typically does not lapse or expire at the end of a predetermined time period, and a certificate holder is generally not required to engage in subsequent activities to maintain the certificate. And lastly, an individual who holds a certification like the CHES and the MCHES, certificates are certified in a specified area as a professional in that area, and typically they're awarded an acronym or letters for use after their names to signify that they have attained and maintained that credential. So for those that are certified in health education, whether it be the entry-level CHES or advanced-level MCHES, you'll see those individuals will have the CHES behind their name or MCHES behind their name to indicate that they are certified at the entry or advanced level. Certificate holders typically can say that they have a certificate in a specified area, but certificate holders are not awarded an acronym or letters for use behind their names upon completion of that certificate program. So the take-home here for me is that when you hear or see the terms certification and certificate used interchangeably, you now know the difference between the two. In addition, in summary, employers and others who may invest in certification or certificate programs should be wise consumers and understand the ramifications of the programs in which they invest. So both types of programs have a very important role to play in professional development of health education specialists. However, I think that consumers should be sure that the providers of the programs are not misrepresenting the programs, and that health education specialists should be sure to represent themselves appropriately upon completion of either type of program. So now let's go to the polling question. And this polling question leads us into the next part of the webinar, which deals with the job analysis or practice analysis. And we want you to answer the question, did you participate in the health education job analysis study in 2009?
Okay, so it's on the screen. Select yes if you did participate in the job analysis study in 2009, or no if you did not. All right, let's give them about 3 more seconds. All righty, and I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to show the results. So it looks like that 74% did not participate in the previous study. So look at all that opportunity there is there.
Great. So I would now like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Dixie Dennis, who will discuss the new practice analysis in health education. Dr. Dennis?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cheney, and hello to everyone. Today, I will begin by talking with you about the purposes of the Health Education Specialist Practice Analysis, or KeSPA, to which it is referred. KeSPA, next slide, please. Yes, thank you. KeSPA involves a process to validate the contemporary practice of entry-level and advanced-level health education specialists, thereby altering areas of responsibility, competencies, and subcompetencies as needed to reflect the current practice. These findings from KeSPA are intended to be used. For example, I'm going to list 4 things for you. Used to examine current practice, used to revise and refine description of the practice as needed. For example, to updating CHES to be reflective of tasks and knowledge used in contemporary health education. Third, inform or shape academic programs. And fourth, to inform and shape professional development efforts. Going to the next slide, we see the history, or a brief history, of job or practice analysis. There have been 3 previous major projects to identify the competencies of health educators. First, the role delineation study. Next, the competencies update project, and the past health educator job analysis, or HEJA, to which it was referred. All these acronyms, you have to keep them in mind, or it can get confusing. The first 2 studies were very lengthy with volunteer leadership, and they were funded by donations and grants. With funding available from the publication of the competencies, the most recent HEJA was completed in under 2 years. That was very quick, considering, if you'll notice the others, using an online survey and a contracted vendor, professional exam services, or most often you hear pro-exam. The time taken to study the competencies is critical, as testing standards require periodic re-verification of the competencies. The current project, KeSPA, is, as you know, underway. Please note the change in terminology from HEJA, from health educator, to the current term health education specialist. This terminology was accepted by both SOPI and MCHES. Also note the title from HEJA to HESPA was changed from job analysis to a more broader term, practice, to be more accurate of the professional nature of the preparation of the job. In the next slide, we see project partners. MCHES and SOPI are once again, as with HEJA, partners on this practice analysis and have contracted again with ProExam. The method, however, in KeSPA is very similar to that used in the most recent HEJA. The next slide, we will talk about the people involved. Also to let you know, KeSPA is funded by designated profits from the framework document publication of the past HEJA results. Our people involved this time in KeSPA. Steering committee is comprised of Elaine All, Executive Director of SOPI, Linda Lasobi, Executive Director of MCHES, Eva Doyle, who was the chair of the HEJA project, and Jim McKenzie and me, who are the KeSPA co-chairs, as well as Carla Caro and Pat Munson from ProExam. Practice Analysis Task Force include 12 people, and we have subject matter experts, which involve 55 people doing things like the phone interviews, independent reviews, and pilot testers. And then, of course, and very importantly, we have our health education specialist, CHES, MCHES, and non-certified, and we're hoping to get at least 5,000 surveys. Next slide, we will see the timeline. What you see is a snapshot of some tentative and some have already happened, timeline for the KeSPA project. The task force already has convened, as you will see. Survey development will take most of this current year. The validation survey, once completed, will be distributed in the beginning of 2014. Data analysis will be finished by late spring and early summer of 2004 and will be presented for acceptance to the boards by the end of 2014. The data will be published to the profession in 2015, and the exams, CHES and MCHES, will be updated in 2016. Then we're going to have a next few slides about the KeSPA process, and in this first one, it's to break it down a little more for you about dates. The steering committee was convened in April 2013. Volunteer recruitment began in May. Then we had a call for volunteers when it was released with over 455 responses of those willing to participate, which was really surprised us and excited us that many people volunteered. They were willing to participate in various opportunities, including the task force, phone interviews, independent reviewer, and pilot testers. Selections were made to constitute groups that would be representative of the demographics of the profession, including work setting, geography, time and profession, certification status, that meaning CHES, MCHES, or none, ethnic background, education, and so on. ProExam started the phone interviews in June. Let you know, this took several calls of the meeting of the steering committee to come up with this, all of this diversity. And the HESPA process second slide is to show you the task force was convened in Washington, D.C. to begin to examine the existing framework. Also, to review the phone interview summary report. The task force reviewed the meeting work product online and had 5 extra conference calls. The revised framework, which will be the basis for the online survey, was distributed to the 20-person group of independent reviewers. In the HESPA Process 3 slide, you'll see that the next meeting for the task force to incorporate independent reviewers is coming up. As a matter of fact, that is this weekend in Washington, D.C. In December, the survey will be piloted. The online survey, in which we expect at least 5,000 health education specialists, will take place the first part of 2014. During this process, certified, non-certified, entry-level, and experienced practitioners from all practice settings will be surveyed. That's very important to us. Next slide, please. The survey will be administered online. Respondents will be asked to rate some competencies on a scales measuring 2 things. First, frequency with which they perform the subcompetency. Second, the importance of the subcompetency to their work as a health education specialist. In addition, respondents will be asked about knowledge items to rate on a scale based on Bloom's revised taxonomy, assessing the cognitive level at which they use these knowledge items. The next slide will show the differences of HESPA from the HEJA survey. Some changes were based on the HEJA experience. First, we're trying to very aggressively encourage a high response rate by using versions of the survey, or possibly we're considering that now, hopefully to reduce the time to complete the survey. We will be using incentives, and we're talking about that now, so that is yet to be determined what they will be, to also increase invitations to specific work settings to try to get a broad range from all the settings, particularly maybe aggressively work at school setting and work site setting. Knowledge items will contain a larger number and refined descriptions of the items. So as you can see, we've tried to learn from HEJA how to make HESPA even better. Invitations are going out to organizational members by way of the Coalition of National Health Education Organizations, as well as the CHES database. Again, and is very important to us, the sampling goal is to be as inclusive as possible with as many respondents as possible. In the next slide, you see more of the HESPA process. After the survey closes, ProExam will compile the data and prepare for the next task force review, which will be in May 2014 at the MCHES office in Allentown, Pennsylvania. The task force will review validation survey results and make final recommendations. This will be then taken to the steering committee for another additional review. As you can see, there's quite a bit to this process. In the next and last HESPA process slide, you will see that the report will be finalized and presented to both boards, MCHES and SOFI, for acceptance in the summer of 2014. So what happens following HESPA? SOFI and MCHES will develop recommendations to the profession based on HESPA results, which will have involved thousands of health education specialists. Information will be disseminated by a variety of ways, for example, newsletters, websites, presentations, and publications. There will be implications for the professional preparation. Universities will want to examine their course curricula to ensure all necessary information is covered. There will be revised framework. It will be released in 2015 and will include a matrix to assist with this process. Of course, regarding credentialing, there will be a revised study companion in 2015, CHES certification revised exam in fall 2016, MCHES certification revised exam in spring 2016. Professional development activities will also want to align with new competencies. This certainly involves so many people. And as we near the end, we want to say we need your help. To accomplish this work, we'll need volunteer health education specialists from, again, variety of work settings and experience levels to participate in this survey. Please watch for the survey, January 2014. Your participation is the key to defining our profession. And in the last slide that I have in my section, I want you to see that for more information, where you may go regarding HESPA, you may want to write that down as Melissa Rarick gets ready to speak with you. And thanks for letting me speak with you. Melissa, are you ready?
Well, I want to thank Dr. Cheney and Dr. Dennis for their presentations. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to discuss the NCCA accomplishments and standards. NCHES is very pleased that we've met national standards, and I'm going to take a few minutes to just talk about what that means in a little bit more detail. So what that means for the NCHES organization, what it means for certificate holders, and what this accomplishment means for the health education profession itself. So Beth mentioned earlier in her presentation the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, or the ICE organization. And NCHES really looks to ICE for resources and guidance in the administration of both our CHES and MCHES certifications. ICE developed the National Commission for Certifying Agencies, or NCCA, in 1977 in order to ensure the health, welfare, and safety of the public through the accreditation of a variety of certification programs that assess professional competence. So certifications that become NCCA accredited have met very rigorous national certification standards. These include things like the administration of the certification, the recertification processes involved, and the assessment development of the tools to assess the professional competence. So NCCA has accredited approximately 300 programs for more than 120 organizations. So some of these certifications range from nursing certification, financial professionals have certifications, respiratory therapists, counselors, emergency technicians, and crane operators. So no matter what the setting, they all must meet these high quality national standards. So as I mentioned earlier, NCCA is the accrediting body of ICE. Again, like Dixie said, there's a lot of acronyms getting thrown around. So the national standards are split up into 5 sections with 21 standards. So this slide illustrates the breakdown of those standards. So you will notice that there are 9 standards that fall under the assessment instrument. And some of those standards were discussed in Dr. Dennis's presentation, as she was discussing the importance of the practice analysis to be completed every 5 years to really validate and update the competencies by which both our CHES and MCHES certifications are based. So the sections are purpose, governance, and resources, the responsibility to stakeholders, assessment instruments, recertification, and maintaining accreditation. So NCHEC, we're very pleased to announce that the CHES certification was first NCCA accredited in 2008. So during the 7 years of development for our advanced level certification, MCHES, the NCHEC Board of Commissioners really based a lot of those policy decisions based on those NCCA standards. So in January of this year, we submitted applications for the reaccreditation for our CHES certification, and then we also submitted a new application for our new MCHES certification. So in May of this year, we found out that the CHES certification was reaccredited and the MCHES certification was granted accreditation for the first time. So it is important to note that this accreditation is for the certifications themselves. So the CHES and MCHES are accredited. The accreditation isn't given to the certifying agency like NCHEC. So this accreditation is very important for the certification and for those that hold it, as it demonstrates that these certifications are based on sound research and we're in compliance with national standards. Dr. Dennis, explained, the whole process that we and Sophie and Pro Exam need to go into every 5 years to really update and validate those competencies. So there's a lot of work involved to, keep up with these standards. And as Beth mentioned in her presentation, there's a plethora of other certifications and certificate programs out there and that are being introduced. And it's very important to know and say that the CHES and MCHES are accredited certifications. So for the next few slides, I'm really just going to point out some of the examples of those 21 standards that I mentioned earlier. You'll see in the slides that the NCCA standard will be in italics, and then I have in bold the ways that NCHEC or the certifications meet those standards. So this standard 2 falls under the purpose, governance, and resource section of the standards, and this slide 2 is really pertains to the governance. So the certification program must be structured and governed in ways that are appropriate for the profession, occupation, role, or skill that ensure autonomy in decision-making over essential certification activities. So as Beth and Dixie mentioned before, they both have served on the NCHEC Board of Commissioners. And this Board of Commission is really the oversight of the NCHEC organizations. And we also have 3 different division boards that serve a purpose to meeting NCHEC's mission. So we have 2 7-member division boards, one being the Division Board for Professional Preparation and Practice, the other one being the Division Board for Professional Development. And these 2 either oversee the eligibility requirements or the recertification requirements for the certifications. And lastly, we have a 13-member division board for certifying health education specialists. And the acronym for that is DBCHES, and these individuals work very hard on item writing and making sure the items on the exam are valid and sound to be tested upon by those applicants who are taking the exam. Standard 3 also falls under governance and refers to the makeup of our boards. So So all our commissioners and division board directors are CHES and MCHES certified, with the exception of our public member. In order to meet this standard, we do need someone, a voting representative from the public, on our board as well. So we do have a public member on our board. And then according to our bylaws, we need at least one commissioner to be CHES and at least one commissioner to be MCHES, since we have 2 levels of certification. So if either of those certifications are not represented on our board, at that time the board will appoint an additional member to make sure, again, both the CHES and the MCHES are represented on our boards. So standard 4 relates to resources. The certification program must have sufficient financial resources to conduct effective and thorough certification and recertification activities. So, for example, Dixie mentioned ProExam in her presentation. So NCHEC makes sure that we have funds available and financial resources to have ProExam assist with the development and implementation of both our certification examinations. Standard 5 also pertains to resources. So the certification program must have sufficient staff, consultants, and other human resources to conduct effective certification and recertification activities. So this slide just illustrates the staff that we have at NCHEC. Linda Lysobi is the executive director, and she oversees all the staff. You'll see that we have someone, Cynthia, in charge of our MCHES exam, and Tanya Cole, who's in charge of our CHES exam. And you might all know, those who are certified, Melissa Schmel, who handles all of the continuing education activities that come through our door, both Category 1 and Category 2. So the next few slides fall under the responsibility of stakeholders. So a certification program must establish, publish, apply, and periodically review key certification policies and procedures concerning existing and prospective certificants, such as those for determining eligibility criteria, application for certification, administering assessment instruments, establishing performance domains, appeals, confidentiality, statistics, discipline, and compliance with applicable laws. So it is our responsibility as a certification program to have and publish policies and procedures in terms of eligibility, the assessment instruments we use, confidentiality, and a disciplinary policy. So for both the CHES and MCHES certification, this information regarding all of these policies and procedures is published on the NCHEC website and is in our examination handbooks. Another Standard 5 also pertains to responsibility to stakeholders, and the certification program must publish a description of the assessment instrument used to make certification decisions, as well as the research methods used to ensure that that assessment instrument is valid. So the NCHEC website and other print materials includes thorough information on the background and scoring processes of both the CHES and MCHES exams. It lists the percentage of test questions on the exam by the area of responsibility. It also provides information on how the pass point is determined. And we use 2 modified Ingloff techniques to determine that pass point each cycle for each exam. Lastly, related to stakeholders, the certification program must award certification only after the knowledge and/or skill of individual applicants has been evaluated and determined to be acceptable. So to earn the CHES or the MCHES credential, an individual must complete either the CHES or MCHES exam and pass. And I know at this time there's a lot of people waiting for the results of our October exam. So, you know, they'll be released probably next week. So, again, in order to get that certification, one must successfully pass the test. One more about responsibility to stakeholders. The certification program must maintain a list and provide verification of certified individuals. So since we have many employers now requiring the certification, MCHES maintains a list of all credential holders, and the certification status of an individual may be verified by contacting the MCHES office. And the way we do that is we have to have an employer in writing request the information that they want to know if a certain individual is of active status as a CHES or MCHES. Standard 10 relates to this section of assessment instruments, and as Dixie mentioned in her presentation, the importance of conducting this job or practice analysis every 5 years to update and validate the practice of health education specialists. So as mentioned earlier, our current CHES and MCHES exams are based on that KeSPA study of 2010, and then we will be updating our exams based on the results of the KeSPA study, and those exams will be updated again in 2016. Lastly, Standard 19 relates to the recertification section. The certification program must require periodic recertification and establish, publish, apply, and periodically review policies and procedures for recertification. So as many of you know that are certified, we do require recertification every 5 years, and everyone must have at least 75 continuing education contact hours. And the Division Board for Professional Development does oversee the policies and procedures as they, involve, the recertification of our certificate holders. So in summary, MCHES is very proud that both the CHES and MCHES certifications have met these gold standards in certification. So this recognition, it demonstrates that MCHES' commitment to the highest credentialing standards of practice for the health education profession. And having this NCCA accreditation is one mark of distinction of MCHES certification programs. And it tells the potential employers, certificate holders, and other stakeholders that these certifications are indeed NCCA accredited. So I spent some time talking about the national standards. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little more detail about the role of MCHES as a certification body and some updates about the certifications themselves and the profession. But before I do that, I want to pose a question to the group. What do you believe is the best way to promote and or advocate for the health education profession? So what we're going to do for this, we're not going to have a polling question for this because it's an open-ended. So we're going to ask that people indicate their responses in the chat box. And then after I'm finished with this portion of the presentation, we're going to open it up for Q&A. And we're going to look at, some of those responses about, what people believe is the best way to promote and advocate the health education profession. So if everyone wants to refer to that chat box, if they want to indicate a response.
So just to be clear.
So MCHES has been incorporated as a nonprofit organization since 1988 with a mission to enhance the professional practice of health education by promoting and sustaining a credentialed body of health education specialists. So as I mentioned previously, we do work with 3 volunteer division boards to help us fulfill this mission. As I said before, we have a board that helps with the writing of our exam. We have a board that helps with the professional development, the policies and procedures that are involved with recertification and working with designated providers to increase the education out there to get the continuing education credits. And we have a board that works with professional preparation and practice, particularly university settings, to ensure that they're testing students on the responsibilities and competencies that will appear on the exam. So the founders of MCHES developed the CHES certification in 1989 with those NCCA standards in mind. So there were foundational decisions such as forming a separate entity for MCHES, rather than having MCHES, or rather having their certifications be part of an existing membership organization. And this being a separate entity, MCHES being a separate entity, supports the accreditation standard for having an independent governance structure. So MCHES does partner with many health-related membership organizations. For example, Dr. Dennis mentioned earlier in her presentation that Sophie is one of the partners on the KeSPA project. And we have partnered with the American Association for Health Education, or AHE, on previous job analysis before the sunset of that organization. So while MCHES does partner with these membership organizations, the mission of the organizations is a bit different. So while membership organizations have members, MCHES has certificate holders. And you know, for those who are certified, you need to meet specific credentialing standards to stay active, to have active status. Well, the membership organization usually constitutes paying a yearly membership dues to stay in active status. So the commonality of both the credentialing organizations and the membership organizations is the goal to really strengthen and enhance the health education profession. So my previous presentation went into quite a bit detail about, you know, all of those NCCA standards, and MCHES works really hard to meet those standards, so both the CHES and MCHES certification can be nationally accredited. And, you know, this certification is also a quality assurance mechanism to various stakeholders. So it's a quality assurance mechanism at the individual level. So the CHES and MCHES certifications, they verify to employers, stakeholders, and the general public that a health education specialist has demonstrated a specific level of professional skills through the completion of the health education coursework, and they have successfully completed a competency-based examination. These certifications imply that the health education specialist has made a commitment to quality practice by engaging in all of those ongoing professional development activities. It also demonstrates professional support for quality assurance and the advancement of the health education profession. The certifications also display quality assurance on the macro level. It showcases that this profession is one with distinct levels of professional competencies and subcompetencies at different levels of practice. So, you know, we went into quite a bit of detail about, you know, how we regularly do the job analysis practice, or job analysis process, or practice analysis process, to really update and validate those competencies at both the entry and the advanced level of practice. It provides standards for hiring qualified individuals for health education positions, and it creates expectations that health education programs and positions should be led by certified specialists that are qualified to practice at not only the entry but the advanced levels of practice. So while we have this accredited certifications and we are noticing CHES and MCHES preferred or required and more job descriptions, there still is a challenge to educate stakeholders about the CHES and MCHES certifications in our profession. So MCHES is working to educate employers and other stakeholders about the certifications. However, I refer to the 7 areas of responsibility. So in particular, Area 7, communicate and advocate for health and health education. So we are a much younger profession compared to other healthcare-related disciplines, so we must communicate and advocate about what we do and how we stand out from other professions. We've had some recent success stories in advocacy. The American Diabetes Association and the American Association of Diabetes Educators, they formed a task force in 2012, and they really wanted to seek input for when they were about to review and revise the ADA standards for diabetes self-management education programs. So both MCHES and SOPHE requested the inclusion of the CHES MCHES certification in these revised national diabetes education standards. So specifically, MCHES sent comments to the task force and asked them to consider in Standard 5, which addresses instructional staff, that they recognize CHES and MCHES as a designating professional partner with multidisciplinary teams to assist in the delivery of this self-management education. So in September of 2012, the ADA released the newly revised national standards for diabetes education, and in Standard 5, it addresses the instructional staff, and CHES and MCHES are now recognized as designated as professional partners within these multidisciplinary teams, assisting in the delivery of diabetes self-management and education programs. So I just want to read what the revisions specifically state, because I think it's important just to see how, you know, the certifications are now being recognized. So reflecting their evolving healthcare environment, a number of studies have endorsed a role for health professionals, including physicians, psychologists, and other mental health specialists. And more recently, health educators, specifically certified health education specialists. As part of the DSME and DSMS, expert consensus supports the need for specialized diabetes and educational training beyond academic preparation for the primary instructor on the diabetes team. Professionals serving as instructors must document appropriate continuing education or comparable activities to ensure their continuing competence to serve in their instructional training and oversight roles. So another success story also involves work in diabetes. So in 2013, SOPHE successfully petitioned the National Certification Board of Diabetes Educators, or NCBDE, to allow MCHES to be eligible to qualify for the exam, the Certified Diabetes Educator, or CDE. So beginning next year, in January 2014, individuals with the MCHES credential is now recognized as an eligible discipline to sit for the CDE exam. I do want to note that there are some other areas, there's some other education involved, some diabetes education that you need to document, as well as having the MCHES credential, but I did give the NCBD website on this slide that you can get more information on what the process is to, you know, apply and document your work in diabetes education. Another success story was spearheaded by an MCHES in the state of Hawaii. So Mark Chimito, with help with some other certified individuals in Hawaii, advocated for a bill to regulate health education specialists in the state of Hawaii. So this bill was sponsored by both a Hawaii representative and a state senator. So the legislation calls for forming a working group to determine the scope and specific duties of the health education profession. So this working group, they need to write a report and provide it to the Hawaii legislator and Hawaii state auditor as a basis for determining professional licensure in the state. So during the legislation process this past year, NCHES, SOPHE, and the Coalition for National Health Education Organizations, or CNHEO, We've sent numerous testimonials to both the Hawaii House and the state Senates. And these testimonials included support for the inclusion of the nationally recognized CHES and MCHES certifications in the licensure requirement for the state of Hawaii. So we, submitted information about the series of job analysis that we've been doing, and just, some more details about the eligibility requirements, and of course that it's an NCCA accredited certification. So this report is due to the state auditor by the end of the year, and we will continue to monitor the progress and provide information as needed. So we'll try to, as soon as we know information, post that on our website and our other social media venues. So in light of the grassroots advocacy effort in Hawaii, and as prevention and health education seem to be playing more of a prominent role in national health care, government entities may take interest in the training, hiring, and quality assurance of health education specialists. So therefore, the MCHES Board of Commissioners passed a policy statement last month in regards to the government oversight of health education specialists. And this policy states that if and when a government entity of any level contacts MCHES for assistance and support toward quality assurance of health education specialists, MCHES will respond in the following ways. We'll provide detailed information about the areas of responsibility, competencies and subcompetencies. We'll give history and rationale for why we do our job analysis, and what the framework of our profession means, and the MCHES quality assurance process. We'll provide support only to entities including the CHES and MCHES credential as one of the criteria for any government oversight measure, so toward eligibility, review, or hiring of health education specialists. And we will provide any official testimonial that the CHES and MCHES credential be the standard for hiring and review of health education in any government entity. So it's important to note that the activity at the state level needs to come from constituents in that state, whereas MCHES is ready and willing to provide support whenever possible by being the national organization. The grassroots effort needs to come from people from that particular state. This slide just illustrates some of the policy-related competencies that we have as health education specialists, and I know I'm trying to be mindful of the time, so I'm going to actually go through the next couple slides a little bit more quickly, so we have some time at the end for some discussion. SOPI has a great resource on their website regarding advocacy and effectively educating state and local policymakers. I also encourage people that want to learn more about advocacy and to participate in some hands-on advocacy efforts to consider attending the 2014 Advocacy Summit. That will be February 22nd to 24th in Washington, D.C. And you can find out more information about that on the SOPI website. I encourage all of you to market the CHES and MCHES credentials as you advocate for the profession. We do have a YouTube video on the MCHES website to help promote the certifications to employers or other colleagues, and give some testimonials from employers that prefer to hire someone with the certification. If you are CHES, MCHES certified, here's some talking points you can use to educate employers, colleagues, or others about the certification. And we do have these talking points on our website, so I encourage all of you to go to our website to visit, to view those talking points. And when you're interacting with employers, I think it's really important to highlight, the areas of responsibility, the competencies and subcompetencies, and really focus on the strengths and skill sets, what really sets you apart as someone who's, a certified individual, and really, highlight the qualifications it took to acquire the certification and maintain the certification. I encourage all of you also to stay connected with us. We have a pretty active LinkedIn group, the official CHES MCHES LinkedIn page. And then if there's any other information or questions that you have or need, here's my email address as well.